Hello, everybody. It's Stephen and Walter here for another episode of So Chatty. And it's episode 47, and it's February the 11th, 2022. So, the last few weeks we've been asking people to submit topics for us or ideas that we might look into in more depth here on So Chatty. Well, we had one come up in the past week, and I'm sorry I can't remember who suggested the idea, but they wanted to know about transferring embroidery files, where you get them, how you transfer them to from your computer to your embroidery machine. And although I thought that was a fairly obvious thing, I guess it's not. A lot of people have struggled with this because, well, you've been to classes and you have found what? That
I found that people either do not know how to download their files or do not know how to put a file onto their embroidery machine, or some people don't have basic computer skills, which actually you really need computer skills if you're working with embroidery files.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about what essential computer skills you might need for that in today's discussion as well. Now, right off the bat, we're going to tell you this is not a tutorial. We're not going to take you step by step as to how you do this. We're going to talk about things in, well, somewhat generalities, because everybody has different machines, and we will be focusing on what we know, and what we know is our Gnome 550E embroidery machines. We'll also be talking about this from the point of view of PC computer technology. Walter might throw in stuff about Mac because he has a Mac and uses a Mac as well. But essentially, what we're going to talk about is the same sort of procedure with a few minor, maybe subtleties to it, and it should get you up and going. But it also depends really on, well, a lot of people think that for some reason, and I'm not making fun of these people, but it does somewhat mystify me that they think that instantly you turn on your machine and files drop right into it. You turn on your embroidery machine and they just magically appear. Well, they don't. Okay. Now, your embroidery machine probably came with some built-in files, but there are very few of those. And, you want to have variety. You want to be able to grab the things that you want for your needs. So we're going to talk about where you go to get those and all of that. But the first thing we're going to talk about is the make and age of your embroidery machine. Okay, back in the dark ages of embroidery machines, let's say, I don't know, possibly even as much as what, 10 years ago?
Yeah, 10, probably more. Embroidery machines, I think, started coming out in the market around the turn of the century.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, my sister had one, and she passed away in 2006. So hers.
Oh, you mean the turn of this century?
Yeah.
Oh, when you say turn of the century, I was thinking the 1900s.
Okay. Yeah, 2000.
I was going, man, embroidery machines in 1900?
No,
I thought, where'd you get that information?
Well, maybe they had commercial embroidery machines before that, but domestic sewing machine embroidery machines, I think, started coming out more in the late 90s or whatever.
Yeah, that sounds well. With the advent of computer technology, we have to remember that most people did not have access to a laptop computer even in the 80s. It didn't become something that was readily available until into the 90s, the mid 90s, and into our century now. And that's what this technology, or the embroidery machines, are really dependent upon computer technology.
Right.
With it. I mean, yeah, and before you could do something like embroidery with your fancy stitches on a sewing machine, and that's been around for many, many years. But still, it's not the same. So, yeah, so if your machine, like, how did they get embroidery files onto those old first machines?
Well, some of them had, as far as I know, some of them had like dedicated input systems, like a card or something like that, where you would have to buy an embroidery file from the manufacturer.
And when you say a card, what do you mean specifically?
Well, sort of like a diskette, like a 3.5-inch diskette. Some of them took 3.5-inch diskettes, I think. But there were ones that had like a proprietary card that was built for the machine to input files. So you had to purchase a file from the manufacturer and put it in.
So did you purchase a file, download it, or did you buy the
No.
actual
You'd
card?
actually end up having to buy a card
Okay.
from the manufacturer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, but I just want you to clarify that
Yeah.
because it, with the way technology was, even in the mid 90s, it was still not an easy thing to do.
I'm not sure. My sister had a very early Gnome machine, and I'm not sure how she got files into her machine. I think she had either it was a diskette, like a 3.5-inch diskette that it used, or it was one of these card systems.
Yeah. And when we're talking about the card systems, that brings up the ones, if you remember back when people were getting the first digital cameras and they had a card in them, they called it a micro SD or an SD card. And, they were, some of them, I remember my first camera, they were huge, little, weren't as big as a 3.5-inch diskette, if you remember what those were, but they were a good size. And then they went, those were called compact discs. And then they went to SD cards, which were half the size of those. And then they went to the micro SD, which are what the name says, they're very, very tiny. And the idea was that you went to your computer, you would have a slot in your computer, or you'd have some kind of card reader, which was something that plugged into one of the ports on your computer, and you put the card in and you could transfer to it. And then from there, you'd put the card into your embroidery machine. Well, that's the way the old days used to work. Now, I would say probably all modern embroidery machines use a USB drive. And everybody knows what a USB drive is, or by other names, a thumb drive or a stick. They look like, everybody knows what these look like, right? Because we're pretty much used to this day and age. And so that is how most machines work. That's how our Gnome works with that.
Now, I also believe that the earlier machines had things like they would only do one color at a time, so you'd have to do one color and then switch the color and line your machine up again and stuff like that. There was all kinds of weird things that the old machines had to do.
Well, we've come a long way since then. And another way that you may have been able to transfer it is with a direct cable. A cable would plug into your computer and it would go into a port in your embroidery machine, and you would transfer it that way. The embroidery machine would have a little program built into it for doing that transfer. And in fact, the Gnome, our 550E, do come with a computer cable. So you can do just that. Although we've never had a lot of luck with that, getting that to work.
I got it to work, but I thought it was a bit cumbersome how to get it to transfer files over, and there wasn't really any advantage to doing that as opposed to using the USB.
Yeah. Well, also you need to have your computer close by, because you don't get like a 12-foot cable with these kind of things.
Actually, I went out and bought a 12-foot cable just so that I could do that, because my computer was a little ways away from my sewing machine.
But there is still a problem with that. Depending, the longer the cable, it may not transfer. There's actually a limitation upon how long a cable you can have. It's not an infinite, or it's not infinite amount of cable. Yeah. But anyways, now some machines, like when I had the 15,000 Gnome, it was wireless machine. It would tap right into your wireless connection in your home. And so it would search your network for a computer. It would find that, and you could take the files that you had downloaded to your computer and transfer them over to your Gnome. Now, that sounds really like convenient and very modern, except the way Gnome did it was still a roundabout way, because you had to have a special little program that you installed to your computer in order for this to happen. It wasn't just like, just transferring stuff, going into your directory on your computer, saying, there's my file, click on it, and download it to the computer or to the machine or whatever. So yeah, there is some confusion here, and this is what takes us to the next topic. But just before I say that, if your sewing machine, your embroidery machine does not take a USB drive, get rid of it, buy a new one. and I'm serious.
Well, a USB drive, or if it takes a memory card or something like that, that's transferable.
Well, yeah, but what
Yeah.
I'm saying, but there's another problem with that. If it's using that old of technology as well, it may be limited as to what the newer files that you can get, whether
Yeah.
they'll work with it too.
No,
I mean,
I'm just saying, like, like the ones that fit in cameras or
yeah, yeah,
fit in your 3D printers and stuff
yeah,
like that.
yeah, okay, but that's still old technology. Like,
No,
all
it's
right,
not.
okay, well, maybe some of the machines. I'm only talking about Genome, but I don't know of any Genome machines right now currently on the market that take an SD memory card.
No, okay, that's true. But there are some, I don't know of other brands of sewing machines.
Well, okay, maybe. Wouldn't hurt to get a new machine, anyways. If it's older than 10 years. Now, someone's going to write a comment and go, I've had my Husqvarna or my Bernina for like 20 years and it's still sewn like a dream and I embroider on it every day and it's great. And if it's not broke, don't fix it. So, fine.
I know there's been, for the older technology, Gnomes and that, there have been interfaces that you can buy for transferring files over.
A bit pricey though, aren't they?
They are pricey. So
like we're not talking $10.
You'd have to really have a decent sewing machine that you would want to spend that kind of money. Plus, I think the file, the technical size of the files, your older machine may be limited to how complicated a pattern
and how much memory, internal memory of the machine.
Plus, a lot of the older machines have really small hoop sizes. Yeah. So, whereas the newer machines have larger hoops.
But this is not the scope of our conversation.
Okay,
You're
that's true,
going off on a tangent. We're not talking hoop sizes and stuff like that. We're talking about how you get them on your machine, your files. So that takes us to, you need to have some basic computer knowledge. Now, you would think this is self-evident, but we have found by going to classes and things that some people have not a clue how a computer works, what a directory system is. And it's very important that you understand a directory system. And what do I mean by a directory system? Well, basically it's like a filing cabinet. Think of a filing cabinet, the old days when we filed everything with file folders and put them in alphabetical order, numerical sequence, whatever. Okay, so basically your computer's directory works the same way. The main directory on your computer, which is probably your hard drive and is usually labeled as C, okay, the C drive. And if you haven't done anything to change that, then it's the C drive, it's the filing cabinet. But within the filing cabinet, in the physical world, there would be drawers. Well, there are drawers on the hard drive. They're called subdirectories. Okay, the main directory is the C drive. Anything below that is a subdirectory. And you can have directories within directories. And it can get very, very complex. So if you do not understand how to create a new directory or what we're talking about by directory, and a lot of people just rely upon the icons on their computer screen and just click on those. And, they drag and drop maybe files back and forth. But that's really not enough knowledge.
I had a lady in one of the classes that I was taking. She had a brand new embroidery machine, Genome 550E, and she had no idea how to use a computer. None at all. Like she brought her computer in, and the lady that owned that was running the class had to physically show her how to create a directory, how to put file into the directory, and how to transfer that file out to her USB. And the problem there is because she had such limited knowledge of how to use a computer, she had trouble duplicating those actions.
Mm-hmm. So basically what we are saying is, if you have never owned an embroidery machine before, and if you are not comfortable with some basic computer technology, do not buy an embroidery machine, because you are going to be very frustrated until you learn and understand basic computer setup, as in a directory system. You're going to be lost.
And even for that is that the embroidery machine itself has a directory system that's
Yeah.
similar to computer.
So
So-
it's not all plug and play here. There are some assumptions made in this modern day and age, in the second decade of the 21st century, that everybody understands the basics of computer technology and directory system. So let me show you on the screen here what I'm talking about. There is a directory system on my computer. Now, you know, I said that the filing cabinet is my C drive. Now, I have many drives on my computer, but we're just going to concentrate here on the C drive. So here's my C drive. That is the main filing cabinet. Everything that is in here is a directory, or those are the drawers of my filing cabinet. And within those drawers, there are subdirectories, or think of them as the individual file folders that are all labeled. And I can go down even further. But if you notice on my directory structure in this particular folder, I have another folder called Embroidery. And this is where I keep all my embroidery files. Now, this is what I was saying before. Depending on your machine, there may be a certain structure, directory structure, that you have to follow. Gnome has 2 directories that must be placed on your USB stick. We'll talk about that in a minute. One is called EMB and the other one's called ORD. Don't worry about ORD. The one that we need to worry about is EMB, which basically stands for embroidery. If I double click on that, I open up the subdirectory and there's another folder. And this is important. It's called EMBF, which stands for embroidery folder. Now, you're going to say, well, why so many levels? That's what I say. But that's how Gnome does it. And if you do not follow this directory structure, you will not be able to call up your file. So that's what I think I said, or no, I haven't said that yet. I'll come to that. I'm jumping ahead of myself. So within this folder are all my embroidery files that I have downloaded. Now, again, this is another subfolder, because if we go into one like this, and now you see the actual files, and there would be an extension on the end of these. And right now, I had some problems earlier today with my computer. I had someone offline fooling around with it to help me out with some things. And there we go. Okay, so ignore PDF, because that's not an embroidery file, that's a document. But here's for the Gnome, you notice it ends in JEF, or Jeff, we call it.
Yeah, which stands for Gnome Embroidery File.
Yeah. So it is the file that needs to get onto my USB stick so I can get it into my machine. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But on your Husqvarna or on your brother, that brother, I think, end in the extension PEC or PES, I think.
Yeah, something, I think PEC, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So depending on your machine, your embroidery files have to end in the correct extension, or what will happen is your machine won't be able to read it. It won't even know it's there. It won't recognize it. So the extension is extremely important. We'll come back to this extension in a moment when we show you how to get embroidery files. So you see, this is fairly involved. Once you've done it, once you understand directory structure, and that's why we're harping on knowing the basics of directory structure in your computer, then you won't have any problem. Again, your manual for your embroidery machine will probably explain this all to you. Maybe. Okay, so that's just basic directory structure. This is on a PC. If you have a Mac, it'll be very similar. You just have to know how to get into it.
You just have to know how to use your Mac to create a directory. It's very similar to the PC.
So, where do I get all my embroidery files? Well, you get them online. Now, before I talk about getting them online, you can buy CDs that have embroidery files on them. They are usually older. Most manufacturers don't bother with that anymore. It's all done online. You download it to your computer. But if by chance you do get a CD, you may have a problem. If you have a fairly new computer, you may not have a CD drive built into your computer because they stopped putting them in the new computers.
Yeah.
Well, that's not absolutely true. You can, on the upper models of them, you can maybe get one, but you have to hunt for it.
Yeah,
You can
or
buy external
yeah,
CD drives as well. But you see, even programs that you buy for your computer now to put onto them, it's all done by download. Nothing's done on CD-ROM anymore or DVD. So if you have a computer without one of those, you're going to have to figure out how, or you're going to have to buy a separate CD-ROM drive. So my suggestion to you is, if it's already on CD-ROM, it's already downloadable on most of these sites. It's probably a really old set of files that for some reason the company never transferred over to an online format. Or find a friend who has an old computer, kind of a deal, because there's no other way that you can copy it over. Now, right now we're talking about just being on your computer. So you can see on the screen, we go to this site a lot. Embroidery Online. It's by OESD, which stands for Oklahoma Embroidery something. I forget what it is. Anyways, they are a very popular website with a great selection. And you can see up in the menu at the top of the screen, they have embroidery designs. They also have supplies and things like that. But let's concentrate on embroidery designs. Okay, so if you see here, you can go down to new releases or techniques, themes. They have them all categorized by different things. And here's their sub-menu as well. So, you know, you can just go into one of these. You want to see what's new, looking for something interesting. Once it comes in there, things are running a little slow today for some reason. And you will find lots and lots of things that you can download. Now you can click on the picture of these and you can see what's involved. You've got the price there. This is American dollars, of course. And you can get to find just about anything. And over on the side, they have techniques if you want classic or freestanding lace, applique. I'm not going to go into these because we've actually talked about some of those in previous So Chatties and on the Idiot Quilter. You can go by theme, licensing, artist, etc. But what I usually do is, if I'm looking for something, let's say gnomes, since I'm all about gnomes these days, I just type it into the search and it'll show me in a second what they have. And there we go. Boy, this is slow today. Okay, so here you go. Different ones that I can get. They have quite a few. Actually over here it shows you designs. There's 32 different gnome designs. Some of these are collections, which means they have more than one design in it. So if I saw something here that was really grabbing me and I want like Honey Gnome 5, $5.99 American. So let's click on him. And this shows me what he looks like. And I can add them to the cart. And it also is part of a collection if I want to get the whole collection, and I can view the collection. So that's multiple embroidery files.
It also shows you the available formats there it is in.
Oh, yes, up here. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
So this is in Art, DST, EMB, EXP, HUS, that's a Husqvarna, GAN, GEF, that's Genome, PCS and PES, those are brother, and these other ones. So it depends on your machine. And your machine should be able to tell you which format you want, because if you download the wrong format for your machine, you're not going to get it. So it shows me all this. It gives me details. Oftentimes they'll give you sewing information, which is a PDF file, which tells you how many colors it's going to take and the order. That's beyond the scope of what we want to talk about today, so we'll just leave that for now. So if I want to add that to my cart, I can sign into my account. And excuse me. Okay, I'm back. It was a scam caller on my cell phone. Sorry about that. So what we're saying is I've put that in my cart. Didn't I put it in my cart? Oh yeah, I haven't put it in my cart yet because I needed to sign in. Let's just grab this one. I know the other one was that. Well, we were talking about the honey. Number 5. Where's honey number 5? No, it's honey number 2. Not that it matters for this case. Here we go. Okay. So there we go. Quick view. And add them to my cart. God, this is slow today. Okay, now, in this case, I don't have to identify the type I want. I'm going to get them all. That's how OESD works. It just gives you all of the formats, so you don't have to worry. But if you go on to another site, there are some sites that ask you before you check out, they'll have a little pull-down menu, and you identify which one you want. Some sites also have a size. Now, this one does, but this particular one is only one size. If it is one with a size, it'll allow you to do a pull-down menu and say you want this size or whatever with it. Now, sometimes there's a variation in price too, depending on the size. Bigger ones usually cost a little bit more than the smaller ones. But every site's slightly different, but that's basically how you do it. So you pay for it, and then what it does is it comes up with a link, and you click on the link, and that downloads it to your computer. Now, let's talk about downloading these things to your computer. What you need to know, and this goes back to basic computer knowledge. You have to know where your computer is going to put that file. Now, if you have never made any changes to the directory that files go into, it will default, at least on a PC, to a directory that's already comes on your computer through Windows called downloads. And for example, let me go back here. I'll just show you what that looks like. Okay, so if you look over here, there's a folder called Downloads. Now, I have changed the setup on my computer because I don't want them to go into that, but they could. But as long as you know where that file is going to go so you can find it, then you're okay. So sometimes it'll come up and it'll ask you, it'll give you, where do you want to put the file? And so you can select wherever you want to put that. But make sure you take note of that, because if you've got a directory structure like I have, it might be a while to find it on there. So you got to know where it's going. Okay, so once it's been downloaded, now it may come to you in 2 different formats. In the case of this one right now that I was showing you, there is multiple files in there. It may come as a zipped file, which is a compressed file, which is one file, but in that file, all of the files are contained in that. So you're going to have to extract it. Now, that's usually easy on a Windows computer, because all you have to do is right-click on the file name, and you'll get a menu, and you'll find a line that says extract, and you just click on that, say okay, and poop, it'll uncompress that file, and you have all your individual files there. So be aware of that.
It works the same on a Mac too.
Okay.
You right click on it and it'll say uncompress.
Uncompress, okay.
Yeah, so
with it. So on a PC it says extract. So that you have to be that, because a zipped file, it'll have the extension .zip will not work if you transfer that over to your embroidery machine. Won't work. It won't recognize it, won't know what that is. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. Are you confused yet? I hope not. So then once you've got it,
this is actually very basic computer skills.
Yes, it is, and
anybody,
probably most people know this, but
yeah, but you never know. Like I said, there was a lady in my class. She had no idea how to use her computer. She says she would say, "Well, my husband always does it for me, or my son always does it for me."
So if you have a slave,
so she's never learned how to do it herself.
So, you know, if you want to depend on somebody else, then don't learn. But really, I think it behooves you not to learn it, because this is not something that is on a need-to-know basis now in our society. Really, this is basic knowledge all people living today need to know, because we all have computers.
Assume, most people in their work life, if they're in an office, will have to work on a PC or something like that. So there's lots and lots of people that know how to do this stuff. But the problem is that there are lots and lots of people that don't know how to do this
and
stuff.
that's why the question came up, because obviously there was a person that was struggling with this. Okay, so let's just stop for a minute here and review. We've talked about basic equipment you need to be able to transfer a file to your sewing machine. We've talked about where you find the files. We've talked about directory structure and unzipping a file, uncompressing it, and all of that. So right now, that means if we've done all those things and we understood that, we now have our file on our computer and we know where it's located. And we know it has the extension that it needs to work with our embroidery machine. So how do we get it onto this, which is going to be the intermediary stage for putting it onto your embroidery machine? So let's talk about what this is. Everybody knows this is called a USB stick, USB key, or just a USB or a fob. There are all kinds of different names for these. You can pick these up everywhere, cheap. But one thing you've got to be aware of, some embroidery machines can only handle a maximum size USB key. And what I mean by that is how much internal memory this has. You can buy these things now in a terabyte, which is huge, huge. But your embroidery machine may not be able to read a terabyte one. You are best not to go beyond 32 gigabytes on one of these. And on the older machines that may still take USB keys, it may even be less.
Yeah.
So beware of that, okay? Again, check your manual. Hopefully it will tell you, or go online to, your sewing machine dealer site or whatever, or the company that made the machine, and find out how much it will take. Because I do know that if you try to put something in, I've tried, that's bigger than in the case of the Gnome machine, I think it'll only handle up to 32 gigabytes. If you put in one bigger, it'll say it's not recognizing the USB. It's like there's nothing on your USB. It's not there. Well, it is, and you'll go, but it is there. It is there, you stupid machine. It is there, but it's because it's too big. It can't handle that. Size matters. Okay. Okay. So to get your file onto this little device, you've got to plug this device into your computer. Now, there are multiple ways to do that. Most computers come with several USB ports, and all you have to do is on the side of your computer somewhere, or at the back, usually at the side, you stick it in. Your computer will recognize it, and you'll see it come up on the screen. And it'll look something like, of course, I don't have one right now on here, but let's say this was a USB. It'll assign it a letter. There may be a name. It may not have a name with it, whatever. And it works the same way as the main directory system. You now have this in there, and all you have to do is click on your file, copy it to your USB. Problem here is, going back, what's your directory structure on your USB? Remember I talked about those two files with Gnome, EMB and ORD? I said ignore ORD, but go into the EMB, and then you have to have another subdirectory called EMBF, the embroidery folder. How do you get those on there?
Does that show up on your screen when you're recording?
What?
Your directory?
Oh, no, it didn't, because I didn't switch over. But good thing, because that will go over here. And I want to go back to just my directory where I keep, this is on my computer itself, where I keep my embroidery files. Remember these two right here, EMB, ORD, they must be on your USB as well. And then you need, within that folder, you need this one, EMBF. Now, this is where you go back to computer technology. How do you create a directory? I don't know. We're not going to explain that right now because it depends on how your computer is set up. But if you know how to create a new directory on your computer, then it's the same way to do it on the USB drive. Just make sure you are in the right section. Like, let's pretend this is my USB drive. It's called D. I need to go into that. And if I went in there and I want to create a new one, I just right click on an empty spot. Or in the case of a new one, it'll be, oops, what am I doing? Don't want to do that. Get out of that. That's not what I want to do. Now I'm using Windows 11. Some of you are probably using Windows 10, maybe lesser.
Under new, right?
Yeah, you go under new and it'll allow you to create a new folder. You click on that and then you just type over top of that whatever you want to call it. In the case of my embroidery files, I would create EMB and then I would click, let's say I called that EMB. I would right click on that again. Go into show more options in the case of Windows 11. And what's this not letting me do?
No, because you're going into new more options instead of create new.
Where do you see create new? Okay, why is this not letting me? Okay, sorry people. Windows 11 is a pain in the ass because it does things different. Well, why do I not have that? I had it. You should be able to just, oh, sorry. I need to double click on it, of course. Now I'm in the directory. Yeah, okay. You know, these are things that I do automatically and I don't think about when I have to explain it. And there you would create a new folder in here, give it the name. In this case, if that was EMB before, then I would now create EMBF. And then I have everything set up on my USB drive, and I can now drop into that EMBF folder, which I do not have here because I'm not creating it. I'm just going to get rid of that before I forget and leave it sitting on my screen. That is the folder that I would drop my files in. With a Gnome machine, if it's not a Gnome machine, then I don't know what you're going to do because we don't own anything but Gnome. Okay. All right. Let me recap this before you're completely confused. You're setting up your USB drive for the first time when you want to transfer over one of your files to it. So you're going to stick it into your computer. The computer's going to recognize it. You will then click on whatever the computer is calling it. If it's drive D or drive E, whatever, just right click on that, pull down menu, look for new, click on new, type in the name of the new directory, EMB. Then double click on EMB, you'll get a blank page. Right click with your mouse, click on new, put in EMBF, and then you've got it all set up. Now, when you want to transfer that file to the USB that you had just bought, then you're going to make sure that you are in the EMBF file. Go to wherever you found that file, right click on it, copy it, go back into the USB and go into the EMBF file folder and right click and click on copy or paste. Sorry, click on paste, and that should put the file onto your USB.
And that process is exactly the same as on a Mac. You do exactly the same way.
Okay. I hope that wasn't too confusing. Like we said, most people probably know how to do this already. So the important thing here is to know what the directory structure your embroidery machine reads. Like I said, if I had just transferred the file to this USB without those directories I've already talked about, my sewing machine won't recognize it. We won't think there's anything there because it's stupid. Okay, we think they're smarter than they are, but they're not. They're stupid. It has to be that structure on a Gnome. I don't know what it is for another sewing machine. Okay, so we're at the stage now where we've figured this out. We've downloaded a file. We've got it on our USB, and we're going to take our USB and we're going to stick it into our sewing machine, into its USB slot, into our embroidery machine. And then there's probably a menu system on your machine. Well, not probably, there will be a menu system where it will allow you to go to the USB drive and click on that, and it will open up those directories and you will see your files. Okay.
And if you don't, you've done something wrong.
Yeah. You've done something wrong. Okay. And that's how you get it into your sewing machine, into your embroidery machine. I keep saying sewing machine, but I mean embroidery machine. So if I say sewing machine again, insert embroidery machine here. Okay. And that's how it works. Again, if you do not see anything, but you know you've copied it to the USB, you know you've got the right directory system, then double check on your computer the extension.
Also, check your manual to make sure you're doing it correctly.
Right. Now, you may have to format your USB, especially if you've been using it for other things. You can do that through your computer, or there is a facility usually on your embroidery machine that will do it as well. And if that's the case, when it does it, it will automatically set up those two folders that I was showing you how to set up with when you have it plugged into your computer.
Yeah.
Again, check your manual.
Yeah, check your manual because the USB sticks can be formatted in various formats, and you have to have the correct format that your machine can read.
So even if you format it with your computer, because you know how to format it, it may still not be readable by your sewing machine.
Yeah,
so if
you format it in a Mac, it'll set it up with Mac formatting, and in a Mac you have to specifically tell the Mac what kind of formatting you have to do on it so that it's in the right format for your sewing machine.
Confused? Go onto the internet and type in, how do I format a USB drive for an embroidery machine? And it may come up with a generic, or it may talk about specific machines. Or go in, how do I format a USB drive for a Husqvarna embroidery machine or something like that? You should be able to find something. Probably find YouTube videos as well about it, okay? So now we've got everything. You can pull it up onto your machine. It's ready to go. All right. Are there other problems? Well, yes and no. Your machine should be set up in such a way that it will identify which hoop is the best hoop for you to use for that particular design. Pay attention to that. That's important. Because depending on your machine, if you put in the wrong hoop, let's say it called for a certain size of a hoop, but you put in the next size down smaller, you could have all kinds of hell. Now, if your machine is intelligent enough in its programming, it'll go wrong hoop.
I mean, it is also possible that if you copy a file from one of these sites like OESD, then you say, oh, I really want the biggest file. So you pick the biggest file. You have to make sure that that file is compatible with your embroidery machine as well, because some embroidery machines have limits as to how big their hoops are.
Yeah. And so you won't be able to do the embroidery. Worst case scenario is that your needle moves over, hits your hoop, and basically smashes itself on your hoop or that kind of thing. So be careful of that. If your machine comes up and tells you which hoop to use, believe it. Okay? Believe it.
And it may come up and say you can't use that file on your machine because you've chosen a file that it will not work on that machine.
So usually when you buy these files, they will tell you what size they are. They won't necessarily tell you specific hoop, but they'll say like 6x8. So, do you have an 8x8 hoop? That will work. But if you're trying to put it into your 4x4 hoop, no, it's not.
I know, like some embroidery machines have very small hoops, like 4x4 hoops and stuff like that. So you have to make sure that you're buying a design that'll fit into your hoop. Otherwise, you won't be able to use the file.
No, it'll be a useless waste of money. And they don't give refunds on that kind of thing, as far as I know. Okay. So, what else do we need to say about that? Okay. Your machine, depending on which one you have, will give you a lot of information that has been buried into the program that you've downloaded for that file. It'll tell you the color changes. It'll stop the machine when a color change needs to be made. May make suggestions as to a brand of thread it might be set up for. Like the Gnome has several different brands of thread, like Isocore, Gnome's own brand of thread, Madeira, and that kind of thing. And you can set it up so that it gives you the numbers that correspond somewhat closely to whatever those thread types are. I wish they'd do Floriani because it doesn't do Floriani, which figures, because that's the kind I use all the time. But that's important information. But that's all buried in the little file that you downloaded from OESD or wherever you got it from. So that's why it's also important that you have the right extension. That's why I can't read it, because it's programmed differently in there. So yeah, that's how you get it all onto your embroidery machine. We're not going to show you that. We walked you through it because everybody's machine may do it slightly different. We only know Gnomes. So, final notes about all this. Check your manual. Yes, check your manual. Now, manuals are not well written, I have found, but it's a jumping off point.
Not only that, you can also do a search online for information. You can also search on YouTube for information. Sometimes there are YouTube videos that will help you out.
And it's a visual medium. Yeah. So, you know, if you're like me, I'm a visual learner. I like seeing a video about it rather than reading a whole page of instructions, kind of a thing. I find that more helpful. But whatever format you like best, go for that. Check it out. Don't just take the file, try to shove it into your machine, and away you go. Because it may not work. It might not. So, I mean, I'm telling you to do this. I'm telling you, do what I say, not as I do, because for me, it is like, oh, just shove it in. Let's see what happens. Sometimes that gets me into trouble. Now, the other source we've already talked about. We've talked about checking your manual, checking the web, YouTube, that kind of thing. Ask your dealer. If you have a good dealer that knows what they're doing, they will have no problem sitting down with you and showing you everything we've just explained. But take into consideration the way computer technology has changed and rapidly changes all the time. Your dealer may know everything there is to know about a PC, but you have a Mac, and they might not know anything about Macs. Okay? A good dealer will know both systems, to give, or have someone in the store who knows. They know everything about PC, but another person in the store may know everything about Macs to help you out. Because this is what I've always said about many things that I've talked about on here that we have talked about. Make sure you have a good dealer. Dealer is all important for this kind of thing.
Yeah, a lot of people will go out and buy a machine online somewhere or another because they can get it for $200 less than what maybe their local dealer has or whatever, or they think they can get it for $200 less. And a lot of times the online sales that you see in that, you can get similar prices at a dealer. And the one thing you have with a dealer, even if you had to pay a little extra, you're getting support from that dealer. And you can go back and say, how do I get a file on my machine? How do I do this or how do I do that? And most dealers will guide you through that sort of thing, and that's invaluable knowledge.
Yeah.
For something like that, if you can go out and buy a machine online somewhere, for a certain amount of money. Also, like just getting off topic slightly, is that sometimes the machines are advertised at a manufacturer's suggested list price, and what you see online, you might say, oh, let's save $1,000 and get the machine for less money. You may actually get that same price with a dealer. Online sales are not necessarily a great deal.
A dealer that's not online, a dealer that's in an actual store, check them out before. If this is your first adventure into the embroidery world, it's fun. I love my embroidery machine. I mean, this is my second one. Okay. We have two in the house, both 550Es as well. I absolutely love doing all the things, and there's so many things you can do with an embroidery machine, but you've got to know the basic mechanics of it, and you've got to have somebody who's going to support you if you run into a problem. My suggestion on any kind of machine, sewing machine or embroidery machine or serger or whatever, don't buy them online. You need the support of a dealer. Like Walter said, it may seem like a really good deal, but you know, when you run into a problem and you have nobody to turn to, is that really worth the a little bit that you saved with that? So yeah, and yeah, I think that's about all we can say about
Yeah,
that.
one thing I would say too, in addition to what Steve was showing on there, he showed up the OESD embroidery site. Well, there are many, many other embroidery sites that you can purchase from. You can just do a search on the internet and you can see all kinds of other places where you can get files from.
And I have put a link to our 4 favorite in the show notes as below, so you can check those out. Now, don't, my suggestion of this, because I got caught on this once. If you go to a site that isn't one of the ones that we have listed, and I'm not saying we're not getting kickback from any of these or anything. We get nothing. We never get anything for any of this. They're ones that are tried and true. Like we've had very few problems with getting our files from there. But there was a couple of sites I have been to before that I did the search like Walter suggested. I'd never really had heard of them before, but they had a file I wanted. So I bought it, I downloaded it, and it was horribly put together. Horribly. It didn't stitch well. At first I thought it was something wrong with my machine, but when I experimented further with it, I realized, nope, it was just a poorly created file.
Yeah, also be careful of ones that you see on Pinterest or on what's the other site? Etsy. A lot of them are home created files by people, and sometimes they are not well, they don't stitch out well.
No. So just beware of that. You know, and if you are trying a new site for the first time that you're not sure of, only buy one cheap file and stitch it out, see how it works. And if it works fine and everything, then I would say, okay, well, I would be willing to buy a little bit more from this particular site. So that's just a warning. So from our own personal experience, all of this, you know, is just our opinion based on our experiences. So, okay. So I hope that helps anybody out that may be struggling or is thinking about getting into embroidery technology. I hope we didn't scare you away from it, because yes, there may be a learning curve and it may be steeper for some than others. Again, going back to that basic computer knowledge. But you know, once you get it down and try it, you'll have hours of fun, believe me. And then it'll open up a whole new case.
Yeah, there's so many different things you can do in an embroidery machine. It's mind-boggling.
It's a rabbit hole. You'll go down it and you'll enjoy every second of it. Okay, so thank you to whoever sent us that suggestion. And as always, we are open to more suggestions, what you would like us to talk about here. So please send those to us. Either drop it into the comments section or send it to me via my email, which is in the show notes as well. And just before we go, I just want to put in a reminder that I am running an all-day sewing retreat via Zoom, March the 5th. All the details are in the show notes below for that. And if you're interested, then just let me know that you're thinking of attending. We're starting to get quite a few, but we still have lots of spots left. I think I'm almost up to about 40 people now on this, and I can handle about 90. So, you know, that's March the 5th, but you don't need there. By letting me know you're thinking of attending, that's what it is. It's just for my statistics. If life gets in the way, you can't show up that day, it's okay. And it's free. Absolutely free. And there are prizes. And I have 3 guest speakers lined up. And one of them is a surprise. I'm so excited about getting this person. I'll give you one hint. This person is a YouTube personality as well. So I'm excited. Can you tell? Yay. With it all. So, okay. So, I hope you have a good week, and we'll see you next week. So, say goodbye, Walter.
Goodbye.